Now, President Joseph Kabila has promised to appoint a new prime minister within 48 hours as he tries to resolve a political crisis in the country. A deadline for elections last year passed and President Kabila is accused of clinging to power. Talks between the government and opposition broke down last month, and one reason was a failure to agree on a new prime minister. Addressing a joint sitting of Parliament, President Kabila promised elections would happen as soon as the Electoral Commission said it was possible. The BBC's Catherine Burahanga sent this report from Kinshasa.
President Kabila does not speak in public very often, and so the country has been anxiously waiting for this address to a special sitting of Parliament. And this speech is important because Congo is in a constitutional crisis. At the heart of the problem is how to transition from President Joseph Kabila's term in office. He was due to step down last year, but elections were not held. And so he's in power beyond the constitutionally mandated 2 terms in office. The government says the Electoral Commission cannot hold elections yet because a national voters register is not in place yet. Technical problems have been blamed for the delay. In the meantime, the government and the opposition have agreed to form a new government, but talks broke down last month. One reason was the failure to agree on a new prime minister. The president blames the opposition grouping Rassemblement for a failure to produce names for suitable candidates for this position.
As I said in my November 2016 address, and bearing in mind that the country can no longer be held hostage to personal interest and to political actors jockeying for position, the Prime Minister will be nominated within 48 hours.
The opposition has been split on a leader. Its longtime flag bearer Etienne Tshisekedi died in February. His son Felix has stepped in to replace him, but he's being fought. The question is what happens if President Kabila does not choose him as the next prime minister. His supporters had this warning.
The date when our people will be able to take charge of their destiny is well known. It's the 10th of April for a peaceful public demonstration. It will send out a strong signal to whoever the president picks as prime minister if that person is not Felix Tshisekedi.
The question of who becomes prime minister is likely to be one step in a long process before Congolese get to vote. And the more interesting point is the fact that President Joseph Kabila has not ruled himself out of any future elections. And how he can run legally is yet to be seen. Catherine Burahanga, BBC News, Kinshasa.
Well, we invited someone from the Congolese embassy here in the UK to come on Focus on Africa, but unfortunately they were unable to come on tonight's show. However, joining me now is political activist and founder of Save the Congo, Mr. Vava Tampa. Vava, thank you very much for joining us tonight. What did you make of Joseph Kabila's address to the nation today?
Well, a complete waste of time, 30 minutes of my time, which I'll never get back. He said nothing substantial. He has not moved on any point to change the mood of the country or to advance the peace agreement or the power sharing agreement which was agreed on New Year's Eve. So we remain in the same political crisis we were a couple of weeks, a couple of months ago.
But he would say, wouldn't he, that that the opposition has so far failed to come up with suitable names for the candidate to be Prime Minister from the opposition, and that he's been waiting for that list. What is your, I can see you're itching to tell me, what is your response to that?
Well, that's a complete lie. I mean, we know that before Tshisekedi left Congo at the end of January for Brussels to follow medical assistance, Tshisekedi had already nominated someone, and that person is Felix Tshisekedi. The deal is absolutely clear. The deal says that the Rassemblement, which is an umbrella group of all the opposition groups, would put forward a person who would be the next Prime Minister. The deal does not say that a list should be put forward. Kabila is insisting on the list for one simple reason. He wants a list so he can then go and corrupt one of the candidates who would allow him to stand again or to put in a referendum so that he can extend his mandate. That's the only reason. And we already have a candidate, which is Felix Tshisekedi.
Well, those are your beliefs, of course. What do you think the chances are of a Prime Minister being named within as Kabila claims 48 hours.
Well, Kabila said 48 hours, but on conditions that Rassemblement puts in a list, and amongst those lists, he would pick a name. So Rassemblement have spoken to some of their leadership. They said, of course, they're not going to put in a list. They remained convinced on the name which had been put forward, which is Felix Tshisekedi. And now, essentially, it depends on Kabila and the international community before everything explodes. Kabila is a puppet, if there is no polite way of saying this, is a puppet of the West. And if the international community, people who had invested financially, diplomatically, militarily to keep in power, forces him or sways him to change his mind, then we are going to have some peace. If they don't, on 10th, this week, things will explode.
Okay, so you're predicting that explosion might happen. If this list does come, if, let's say, an opposition prime minister does come along as well, how will that ease political tensions in DR Congo, if at all? Well,
it's not, because, look, the reason which Kabila continued to refuse the current gentleman who's been put forward, who is Felix Tshisekedi, is for the simplest reason. He knows that Felix, for a start, he was not going to allow another referendum to allow Kabila to stand again. And those are the two things Kabila wants. Kabila wants a candidate who would allow him a referendum, for a start, and allow him to stand again. And Felix would not. And if another candidate is put forward, then we're going to find ourselves in a deeper crisis, because the people, everyone at home and abroad, understand that Kabila wants to cling to power, and the last thing we want is to allow Kabila to cling to power.
Vava Tampa from Save the Congo, thank you very much for joining us on Focus on Africa. Thank you.